please, don't try anything that you're about to see us do at home.
Ever.
On this episode of Mythbusters.
That was a nice line.
It's the moment we've all been waiting for.
The great questions of the internet.
As the massive controversy of playing on a treadmill finally gets put to the test.
I'm good to go. Over.
Can an airplane really take off on a giant conveyor belt?
Oh, that was beautiful!
Then Tori, Grant, and Carrie bug out with creepy crawlies.
Ew. Oh, there's so many in there. Ugh.
With the classic myth, can cockroaches survive the radiation from a nuclear bomb?
Start her up.
Finally, the team blow an internet prank out of all proportion.
Oh my God! Grant, get over here! Look at this!
When they find out if foam can really soil a sedan.
This is more than a prank. This is evil.
Who are the Mythbusters?
It's time to blow some stuff up.
Adam Savage.
This is killing me.
And Jamie Heineman.
That was fun.
Between them, more than 30 years of special effects experience.
This is the kind of thing I do on the weekend.
Joining them, Carrie Byron.
Come over here. You smell that?
Grant Imahara.
He's alive!
And Tori Belleci.
This is starting to feel like a bad idea.
They don't just tell the myths, they put them to the test. And first up, a myth that's caused a fan site frenzy.
I gotta tell you, this next myth, man, is super controversial. There's literally thousands of pages of the most vitriolic discussions on both the World Wide Web and the Discovery fan site about this next myth.
So that probably means that we're doing plane on a conveyor belt.
Exactly right. Let me spell it out for you. Normally, a plane sits on a runway, spins up its engines, moves forward, gets enough air over the wings, and takes off. But in this case, the plane is sitting not on a runway, but a huge conveyor belt that is matching the plane's forward speed in reverse. The grand question is, can the plane take off? The myth is that it can't.
Well, I know what I think.
Keep it to yourself because we're going to test it out.
It's a complex myth that's driven the fan site wild, and it's definitely one to get you thinking. If an airplane is on a conveyor belt and both are going the plane's takeoff speed, but in opposite directions, what will happen? Some say the plane will take off. Others say the plane will be held in place. But what do you think?
How are we going to test this?
I figured the best thing is, as always, to start small. Let's go get the simplest conveyor belt we have access to.
That'd be my treadmill.
Exactly. Put a model plane on it and see what happens when we put those two things together. I also think I know the exact model plane I want to use. Grant has a ton of experience flying it and might be able to teach us.
Okay.
Perfect.
So to curtail this controversy, they need a conveyor belt and an airplane. And Grant's been drafted in to help Adam and Jamie get their wings.
Hey.
Can you teach me how to fly this to do airplane on conveyor belt?
Absolutely.
All right, let's go.
Okay, guys, so this is a park flyer. It's a very slow directional controls are on the right. It's ratcheted so you can keep a position.
Elevators.
You trim it out so that you kind of tail drag. That makes it perfect for a beginning flyer.
Grant makes it all sound so easy. But already, Jamie has some grave concerns.
I don't know if I can handle this, actually. We're using this particular item the way that it was intended.
And leaving Jamie stunned, Adam's cleared for takeoff.
Good. My prediction for Adam is, he's got an exuberant personality. He is likely to crash as fast as possible. Jamie, on the other hand, has a very controlled personality. He is likely to fly a very controlled pattern.
That was a nice line.
In fact, the man with the flyboy mustache proves to be something like the Red Baron. With acrobatics like that, he's qualified as chief aviator on the test. But will it be enough to quell the quarreling caused by this myth?
Well, gentlemen, looks like you've got things under control here.
Reasonably. Thanks for your help, man.
All right.
Thanks, Grant.
Take care. Good luck.
Thanks. I think we're going to need it.
Now, if you've never heard of this next myth, you must live in a nuclear bunker.
The next myth is a super creepy crawly one, and I'm not really happy about it. It's about cockroaches.
Ugh, I hate cockroaches. All right, so what's the myth?
The myth is a classic that everyone's heard of, that cockroaches will be the only things to survive a nuclear blast.
Well, that sounds cool, but how are we going to test this without killing ourselves?
Here's food for thought. Like it or not, cockroaches are everywhere. And so far, they've survived 300 million years on this planet. But can they really survive a nuclear explosion?
Specifically, this myth is about the radiation that the cockroaches would get from the nuclear blast and not the blast itself. Because, face it, that's going to be so hot it's going to fry anything anyway.
All right, so how are we going to test this? Get some cockroaches and a nuclear bomb?
Yeah, the roaches are going to be the easy thing. The radiation might be a little harder.
Well, I think for completeness, we should try a few other types of insects, just to make sure that cockroaches are the only thing that'll survive.
Why don't we do fruit flies, because that's a classic insect for these types of experiments. We'll also do flower beetles, because they're very tough.
So it's an all-star insect lineup, including flower beetles and fruit flies. But first up, the guys get face to antenna with the principal parasite for this parable.
Okay, guys. Here is a box I am sure the delivery guy is very excited to not open up in his truck. These are our cockroaches.
Say guten Tag to the German cockroach. Cutie, cutie, cutie. They cause allergic reactions in people.
Oh, there's so many in there.
Got another runner.
And have even been known to feed on human nighttime dribble.
Dude, that is so dirty.
But will the deadly radiation described in the myth get the better of them?
Oh, this guy's like a sprinter.
So with most of the roaches raring to go, what's next for this myth?
I'm calling insects to come to me so that I can put them in these boxes and irradiate them. I know that's kind of cruel. They don't really know what's going to hit them, but you know, science is fun, but it's not always nice.
It seems nice guy Tori is having a conscience crisis.
It's exciting.
Because with insect death a possibility, this myth is pretty unusual. From savage sharks and angry arachnids
This is terrible.
to gnarling guard dogs.
Oh, run, run, run!
Where animals are involved, it's normally the Mythbusters that come off second best. But not this time. These cockroaches may be on death row, but because they were bred for use in a science lab, their days were always numbered. But if the myth is true, then no harm will come to them.
In the cockroach survival experiment, I need to make some sort of compartment that's going to hold 50 cockroaches. I need them all to get equal amount of radiations, making a little cockroach motel of death, or as I'd like to call it, the Holiday End.
And once the insect containment boxes are conjured up, the guys just need to get hold of some nuclear radiation. And that should be easy. Later, Adam and Jamie put plane on a conveyor belt to the ultimate test.
Go, Jamie, go!
But next, it's survival of the yuckiest as the team mix roaches and radiation. It's the road to nowhere. The lowly conveyor belt is mankind's labor-saving tool, manufacturing aid, and even automated dog walker. But it's also part of an incredibly controversial conundrum. If a conveyor belt was going the takeoff speed of an airplane in one direction, can it stop that airplane from taking off in the other direction? Or would the plane simply take to the skies? So far, Adam and Jamie have graduated from flight school. All they need now is a conveyor belt. And this not-so-run-of-the-mill human treadmill should be enough to get this myth up and running.
We know what speed the plane needs to take off, so we've set the treadmill to go that speed. We're going to put the plane on it, see whether it takes off.
And with the airplane's takeoff speed being 11.3 miles per hour, both the plane and the belt are set to that magic number.
I've read literally thousands of pages of vitriolic commentary and argument on the web about airplanes on a conveyor belt, but nowhere did I find anyone who'd put an airplane on a conveyor belt. That's just what we're about to do in Scale here. And hopefully we're about to answer some really important questions.
It sounds simple, but as Adam soon finds out, it's not all plain sailing.
I'm sensing a problem.
Those wheels are so flimsy.
They are so flimsy and they're just moving around.
Adam's engineered a flight plan to steer the plane, and carefully making sure he's not pushing it forward, it's all systems go.
It's an airplane on a conveyor belt, dude. It's one of the great questions of the internet.
Ain't that the truth? But it's not answered yet, Adam.
I'll set it to fat burn.
Fat burn, nice.
So with the treadmill set to fat burn in one direction, Janie's plane burns rubber in the other direction.
Go ahead and ramp it up.
Luckily, they get their act together. But is that a result?
And we thought it was going to do what?
It went right off the end of the conveyor belt.
No.
Yes.
Yes. With the conveyor belt going 11.3 miles per hour in reverse, Jamie accelerated the plane up to match that speed. And get this, the plane moved forwards. However, it didn't have a chance to get airborne because the treadmill is too short. The guys are investigating an atomic bomb of a myth. Reputed to survive the deadly radiation from a nuclear explosion, apparently cockroaches will inherit the Earth. But will they be alone?
I've been combing the black market, I've been searching the internet, and finding a nuclear bomb is not as easy as you might think.
Fortunately, our researchers have managed to find a lab that's willing to work with us.
Yeah, apparently they have a cobalt-60 radiation source that they're willing to let us test with.
Awesome. I can't believe we're actually going to do this myth.
Well, believe it, Carrie, because it's all going to go down at the Pacific Northwest Laboratory. Inside the imposing structure, Tori meets radiation expert Michelle Johnson.
All right, so Michelle, this is where we're going to be irradiating the insects, right?
Right. We have a cobalt-60 source in here, and it produces a radiation level of about 55,000 R per hour, which is enough to kill you in about 10 minutes. Enough to kill you in about 10 minutes. Kill you in about 10 minutes.
As Tori picks his jaw up off the floor, let's get this straight. They're not using a nuclear bomb to irradiate the insects, but a highly dangerous radioactive metal called cobalt-60. They'll use this metal to irradiate their insects at 3 different exposure settings called rads. Test 1 will be 1,000 rads. Test 2, 10,000. And test 3, 100,000. And alarmingly, even the lowest dose is really bad news for a human. And with the bugs all set, it's go time for the 1,000 rad test.
What happens is the radiation source will come up to the porthole here, and then we'll have a beam of radiation that will be exposing our insects.
With the first bugs in place, a push of a button reveals the alarmingly lethal radiation source.
Right now, we're radiating our cockroaches, our fruit flies, and our flower beetles at 1,000 rad. Now, that is the lethal dose for humans, right on the other side of that wall. And to make it even scarier, we're told we can't go past this line. Safe, unsafe. Safe, unsafe.
It's undoubtedly one of the most dangerous experiments in the history of Mythbusters. For human beings, a mere line on the floor separates life and death. But after 3 minutes in the firing line, will the insects be incinerated?
Fruit flies are going to be fruit fries.
Later, the Mythbusters confront the controversy of playing on a treadmill full scale.
Oh, that was beautiful!
But first, if roaches get nuked, will they rule the roost?
Let's zap them.
The Mythbusters are no strangers to controversy. They campaigned for free energy.
It's breaking free of the bonds of the energy conglomerates.
And took on the man in the Great Gas Conspiracy.
Okay, that's enough of that test.
But now, they're tackling the most debated myth in Mythbusters history.
The great questions of the internet.
If an airplane was on a conveyor belt and both were going the same speed, but in opposite directions, would the plane be held in place or would it take off? So far, it's been a turbulent ride. The plane's gone forward on the conveyor belt, but it hasn't taken off. And that means the boys need a new plan.
We need a longer treadmill, and I don't see how we can modify this to be long enough.
Well, how about a sheet of butcher paper, just a long roll of it, and just yank it?
That's great. That's terrific. All we need for that test is to figure out what the shortest distance this can become airborne in. All right, this is airplane takeoff test 1. Jamie, whenever you're ready. Dude, that took off in like 20 feet.
With the takeoff distance sorted, what's next?
I'm going to drag 20 feet of this butcher paper behind my device here with the plane facing in reverse, like this. I'm going to get up to about 12 miles an hour over the takeoff speed. Jamie's going to kick this plane into gear, and if it can take off before it leaves the paper, then I think this myth is not looking very good. Long conveyor belt test in 3, 2, 1.
Up, stop. Nope.
Oh, it just goes to show what looks good on paper doesn't always work in practice.
No. The plane just went off before I had even controlled it.
Well, he's not a happy camper. But maybe a little runway maintenance will help his piloting skills and settle this global dispute once and for all.
Okay, I'm ready to start. You all ready?
I'm ready.
Okay, go.
After so many false starts and so much controversy...
Is that a flying plane?
That is a flying plane, and it was on the paper when it took off.
Excellent.
Confounding and confusing, the plane didn't stay where it was. It moved forward and took off before the end of the conveyor belt.
Here's the thing. If the myth is that a plane on a conveyor belt can't take off, we just had a plane on a conveyor belt and it took off.
And what's more, they have a theory as to why.
All right, I'm trying to use this car to demonstrate where I think people get mixed up. The forward speed of the car is exactly the same as the backward speed of the conveyor belt, thus the car remains stationary, and this is why people think that the plane's not taking off, because there it is, it's stationary, it's not moving.
Yeah, but cars and airplanes move by different means. The car is sending power to its wheels. That's what makes it move forward or backward or keep up with the conveyor belt. Airplanes have free spinning wheels, and they move because there's a propeller pushing air, which makes the airplane go forward.
Exactly. So if I remove power to the wheels of this car, thus turning it into a plane, and then my hand pushing will represent the force of the propeller pushing against the air, and I feel almost no resistance on the conveyor belt, so the plane moves forward.
And it takes off.
Exactly.
So let's get this straight. A car gets its thrust through its wheels, creating forward motion using the ground it's on. But a plane gets its thrust through its engines, which are independent of its wheels, and so is not affected by the ground, or in this case, the conveyor belt. When engines are on, forward motion will happen. That's the theory. But to cement their place in history, the Mythbusters are going full scale with a manned aircraft and the mother of all conveyor belts. The question is, will they get airborne?
Go!
Back at Roach HQ, the 1,000 rad radiation test is over.
Fruit flies are still moving. Flower beetles still moving. Cockroaches still moving.
Remarkably, all the bugs seem to be alive. Well, at least for now. Because radiation works on a cellular level, exposure may not take effect immediately. So each set of bugs is put into containers, which will then be monitored over a 30-day period.
We just did our first test at 1,000 rad. The bugs look all right, so we're moving on to the second test, which is 10,000 rad.
So in test 2, the dial gets cranked up by a factor of 10. It's affecting the cameras, but luckily it isn't affecting Grant.
I have to admit that it is a little freaky to go into the room, but I'm starting to understand that just because we subject the bugs to radiation doesn't make them radioactive materials.
They're still moving.
That's it.
Nice.
Just like last time, they're all still alive, even after 10,000 rads. But only time will tell how long these bugs will last.
Now we're going to step it up. We're going to 100,000 rad. That is 100 times the lethal dose for a human. That is melting faces at the end of Raiders of the Lost Ark scary.
Let's zap them.
And while the last set of bugs are being zapped, Raiders of the Lost Ark style, Grant's found out the background to this myth.
Hey, do you know what I found out about the science of radiation?
No, what?
Well, we know that radioactivity was discovered by Henri Becquerel in the late 1880s, but it wasn't until more recently that scientists found out that it's the sensitive tissues, like those in our bone marrow or our intestinal tract, that make us more susceptible to poisoning by radiation than other species. The theory is that the more simple body structures of the insects should make them less susceptible to radiation than us.
Well, that's the theory. But after the 100,000 rad test, the news ain't good for the bugs.
Oh my gosh. From the looks of it, there might be like 10% still alive. That's frightening.
Nearly all of Test 3's cockroaches have died. But from the looks of the other bug boxes, this test ain't over yet.
So we've got all of our bugs here that have been exposed to the various levels of radiation, 1,000, 10,000, and 100,000 rad. Now we've got a fourth group, and that is the control set. The only difference is that they haven't been exposed to any radiation. We'll be able to use that to compare to the bugs that have been irradiated and see how they do.
So it's back to the shop. But the question is, will the bugs survive, or will they drop like flies? It's the sum of all fears. But would cockroaches survive the radiation of a nuclear explosion and inherit the Earth? In this classic modern myth, Carrie, Tori, and Grant have blasted 3 species of insect with 3 increasing levels of radiation. Will the cockroach be the ultimate survivor?
Hopefully they haven't mutated into some crazy monsters.
Back at the shop, what's the bug bulletin?
Okay, so here's the plan. we have 12 boxes of insects, 4 of cockroaches, 4 of flower beetles, and 4 of fruit flies. We'll be monitoring them over the next 30 days, counting how many die.
The job of insect coroner may sound grim, but for the Mythbusters, it's important to keep upbeat.
We got a breach.
And what's more, they're making sure the bugs on death row are being well looked after.
They'll be given all the food and water they need, and we'll check in on the 15-day and 30-day increments. And we'll see if the cockroach is, in fact, the ultimate survivor.
So with 2 weeks to wait until the next dead count, the team needs something else to do. Coming up, will the Mythbusters feel the wind beneath their wings?
Holy crap.
But first, the team scrutinize a soapy internet story.
Oh my God! Grant, get over here! Look at this!
And this is perfect. A foamy fable straight from the fan site.
1, 2, 3.
What the hell are we doing this for?
Look, there is actually a myth associated with it. If you take a can of shaving cream and you freeze it, if you take off the outside, put it in someone's car, it'll expand to fill the car.
Shaving cream is a practical joke staple for any frat boy funster or perky prankster. But as the internet rumor suggests, could 1 can of frozen shaving cream really inflate to fill a car?
The first step in this myth is to freeze the can of shaving cream. I'll leave it in there for a few hours, and while that's freezing, I'm gonna go get cleaned out.
All right, I have my shaving cream. It's frozen solid. Now all I need to do is cut off the can. Hopefully it won't explode in my face. What I should be left with is a cylinder of frozen shaving cream. Then I'll stick that into the car, and hopefully, as it starts to thaw, it'll expand and fill up the whole car. Quick, close the door.
This caper promises a car bursting with bubbles. But Tori's scoring this myth low on the prankometer. Lower even than the infamous biscuit bullet.
This is probably the lamest prank I've ever seen. There's no way this can of shaving cream is gonna fill the entire car.
Obviously, Tori thinks this fan site toiletry tale stinks. But 5 hours later...
Oh my God! Grant, get over here! Look at this! Look!
What?
Nothing.
That is so unamazing.
Clearly, they're unimpressed with the foam's lack of inflation. But these merry pranksters aren't done yet.
That was a lame prank.
Well, you know, we did buy 50 cans.
So it's take 2, and this time it's 50 cans into the freezer. And quick as a flash...
All right, we gotta move fast. These things are gonna start defrosting.
It's a race against time as Grant and Tori grind open all 50 frozen cans.
Okay.
But once the car's loaded up, the hours pass in the blink of an eye.
Whoa!
Hey, you know what?
Nothing.
Well, but you know what? That's expanded a lot more than I thought it would.
This isn't a prank. It's a minor inconvenience.
Fans suggested shaving foam, and it's a flop. But rest assured, the Mythbusters have a last plan up their sleeve.
The next step is we're going to ramp it up. We are going to create a situation where foam is going to come out of the windows, possibly explode the car.
In 1908, thousands doubted the Wright Flyer would succeed. In 1968, hundreds of thousands argued the first 747 was too big to fly. And in 2008, millions are clashing over the myth of playing on a conveyor belt.
Excellent!
That little airplane took off just like I thought it would. So, myth busted, right?
Not so fast, man. You know we can't leave it there. You know this debate would never be quelled until you and I did it full scale, and that's just what we have to do.
Well, you know what that means.
Yes, I do. It means a real plane, and it means a really big conveyor belt.
And hey presto, this should do it. A 2,000-foot length of tarpaulin, which they can drag behind a truck to create the biggest conveyor belt in history. And with that sorted, they cruise down to Castle Airport.
I love it. That thing's great.
Where they meet the other ingredient for this myth, kamikaze ultralight pilot Mark Johnson.
It's the Cadillac of ultralights. It's 400 pounds, the engine's 100, so the plane itself's only 300, and it'll take off straight up 1,200 feet a minute. It's quite amazing.
It's amazing, but will it take off on the conveyor belt? It's bigger scale and a bigger challenge with Mark's life on the line. Just like in small scale, the Mythbusters need distance and speed measurements to get this myth off the ground.
All right, distance to takeoff. Good to go.
Jamie gives clearance. Mark floors it. And in no time at all,
Takeoff distance, 85 feet. That's fantastic for us.
fantastic. Next, the guys need the takeoff speed.
We got the cockpit camera that we put on the airspeed indicator in miles per hour. Let's see what its takeoff speed was.
That was...
Yeah, about 25 miles an hour.
And with speed and distance covered, it's time to launch full scale. First up, Mark's ultralight will be moved onto the tarpaulin treadmill. Then Jamie will attach his pickup to the end of the tarp. He'll pull it at 25 miles per hour in the opposite direction to the ultralight, just as Mark tries to take off. That's the plan. So where's the tarp?
We've got 2,000 feet of 12-foot wide tarp, which we're going to drag behind Jamie's pickup truck, effectively making the world's biggest conveyor belt.
It's a simple plan, which Adam, playing the role of the airplane, demonstrates. But there's trouble when he rips holes in the tarp.
Sorry.
And that's not the only problem.
So it's not as simple as we thought. The wind's shifting down the runway. It's only about 10 or 15 degrees, but each time it shifts, it's throwing this whole thing in a tizzy.
It seems traditional Mythbuster patience has gone with the wind.
You're going to... Stop. I don't know where the you're going. If this wind is heading up the runway, we can't do anything. It's...
Well, as you can see, the wind has picked up. It's causing us a big problem. So we're out of here. We're going to be back early in the morning.
It's the most requested fan myth ever. So failure to launch is not an option for the Mythbusters. Tomorrow is their last chance to blow away this myth. To answer the question, will cockroaches inherit the Earth after a nuclear blast? Carrie, Tori, and Grant have exposed cockroaches, fruit flies, and flower beetles to terrifyingly high levels of radiation.
Tricky little
And at the halfway mark of the experiment,
oh, stinks! Oh.
the death toll is mounting. But with 2 weeks to go, it's still too early to call which bug will be the ultimate survivor.
What is he doing?
Tori's trying to see if he can hold his breath longer than a cockroach.
Why, do cockroaches hold their breath for a long time?
Yeah, supposedly.
What's my time?
8 seconds.
Well, if you want to see how long cockroaches can hold their breath, log on to discovery.com/Mythbusters and check it out.
Coming right up, the dead count's over. But which bug is king of the world?
I have the only remaining life form to have survived a 100,000 rad dose of radiation.
Practical jokes are great fun, as long as they work. But as we've seen, the foam fizzer from the fan site barely registered on the prankometer.
This is probably the lamest prank I've ever seen. It's of microscopic proportions.
So now the team is taking it to absolute max with 25 gallons of something called AB foam.
AB foam, it comes as a liquid. It's 2 parts. You mix equal parts together, and then you have about 30 seconds of mixing time before it starts expanding and foaming up. But once it sets, after about 20 minutes, it's a hard, rigid, dense foam.
In fact, it's so quick to expand and so cohesive that when Adam and Jamie blew up a plane, they used AB foam to seal the deal.
Attention, the plane is live.
But when AB foam is mixed, it gives off heat in an exothermic reaction. And with 25 gallons of the stuff, that's even got Tori worried.
We're going to take some safety precautions. We're going to empty out the gas. We're going to empty out the oil. We have some fire extinguishers standing by. If it does catch on fire, it can burn itself out, and no structures will be in danger.
25 gallons of liquid is equivalent to around 3.5 cubic feet. But once mixed, will the chemical foam swell up enough to fill the 90 cubic feet of space inside the car? One thing's for sure, there's no time to consider details.
Once you start mixing, there's no waiting and oops, I did it wrong. No, you have to go and you have to go immediately. Once this thing starts to go, you've got to get as many kits in there as possible.
There are absolutely no second chances in this test because in a matter of seconds, this luxury sedan is stuffed full of foam.
This is more than a prank. This is evil. This is a car that will never, ever drive again. Just to show you how rigid this foam is. Look at that. Solid. Solid. That is a mean, mean thing to do.
Yeah, we did it. We filled the car up with AB Bow. My dreams come true. I've always wanted to see this, and now I have. You know, the shaving cream wasn't that great of a joke. So we ramped it up, and this is what we came up with. I'm totally satisfied. I know if I walked up to my car and it looked like that, I'd be pretty upset. It would ruin my day, not to mention my car.
Oh, and anybody thinking of pranking the team, here's some tough talk for you.
Don't mess with us. That's what you get.
Carrie, Tori, and Grant have been playing with deadly radiation.
Captain, I recommend we set all phasers to stun.
They've exposed cockroaches, fruit flies, and flower beetles to 3 levels of this invisible killer. But which one will be crowned the ultimate survivor? That was a month ago, and ever since, they've been counting the dead.
10. Ooh, no hit on that one.
It's been a morbid 30 days. But remember, these insects were always bred for death by science. Just like Tori, the insects have been hit hard, but there are survivors.
You know, this is crazy. This is the 10,000 rad. This is 10 times the lethal dose for humans, and look how many cockroaches are still kicking.
And the flower beetles have gone one better.
I have here in my hand the only remaining life form to have survived a 100,000 rad dose of radiation, the flower beetle.
So is this myth busted or confirmed?
And done.
Okay, so the idea was that cockroaches would be the only thing to survive a nuclear blast. What do we get?
Well, remarkably, cockroaches are really good survivors. After 30 days, the ones exposed to 10,000 rad still had 30% still alive, and the ones exposed to 1,000 rad had 50% still alive. It's pretty amazing.
That's incredible, considering if we were exposed to 1,000 rad, we'd be dead.
So it's confirmed. Cockroaches outsurvive humans after nuclear blast.
True, but we tested 3 types of insects, and the other 2 did much better than cockroaches.
Yeah, the fruit flies did really well until they died of natural causes. And then the flower beetles, well, they were the strongest. After being exposed to 100,000 rad, which is 100 times the amount that would kill us, they were still 10% alive. The cockroaches, there was none that survived after that kind of exposure.
So the final result is that all the insects outsurvive humans, but as far as inheriting the Earth, there are much better candidates than the cockroach.
Which means it's busted.
Busted.
Just like our chances of reproducing.
Up next, they're cleared for takeoff. But will they settle the squabble surrounding the myth?
All right, this is full-size airplane on a conveyor belt. For real this time.
In 100 years of flight, man has tried to get off the ground in some inventive ways. But none have caused such heated public debate as this flight of fancy. If a manned airplane is on a conveyor belt and both are going at the airplane's takeoff speed, but in opposite directions, will the plane be held where it is, or will it take off? Yesterday, Big Scale hit big problems.
Oh, crap.
The crosswind blew away any chance of a test.
If this wind is heading up the runway, we can't do anything.
It's dawn on the tarmac, and that's why we're here, because there's no wind for, we're told, the first couple of hours of the morning. We are hauling ass because the tarp is perfect right now.
It's like making a very big bed.
With less than a guff of air movement, you could say the Mythbusters have broken wind.
This is looking great.
But another discovery could seriously jeopardize this test.
Yesterday, while Jamie was driving just at a slow speed, I decided to run on the tarp because I thought it'd be funny. But every time my foot hit the tarp, it tore a huge hole in it. That's what I'm picturing as the worst case scenario. But the moment that plane starts to roll and Jamie starts to drive in the opposite direction, the tarp just rips solid hell.
Even though he's facing a bizarre conveyor belt death, Mark seems unflappable. But with 10 years of flying experience, what does he think of the myth?
Do you think that this conveyor belt will be able to keep your plane from taking off?
Yes, if I match my speed exactly the same speed forward as it's going backwards, and there's no air over the wings, I should just sit there like a brick.
Hang on.
I should just sit there like a brick.
So, the controversy continues. Pilot Mark believes the myth that the plane will be held in place by the belt.
And if we do take off, I'm going to be a surprised individual.
It's surprising, but small scale proved the plane got enough lift for takeoff. So there's only one way to settle the argument once and for all.
guys ready to do this thing?
I'm ready.
I'm ready.
Let's do it.
All right.
It's time to go big scale. And with Jamie's pickup pulling a massive conveyor belt in one direction, will a manned aircraft going the same speed in the other direction have the lift it needs to get airborne? Mark does his final checks.
Light support, you're clear to take off.
Copy that.
Jamie's all set.
The truck is in gear. I'm good to go. Over.
All right, this is full-size airplane on a conveyor belt. For real this time.
Thousands of people wait in anticipation. And Adam gives the thumbs up.
Go, Jamie, go.
Mark and Jamie accelerate in opposite directions. And it's arguably the most incredible sight since the Wright brothers got airborne. A very surprised Mark Johnson takes off in his plane from a conveyor belt.
That worked! Oh, that was beautiful! Go, Jamie, go!
A beautiful takeoff. Even with the conveyor belt matching the plane's takeoff speed, the plane moves forward past the traffic cones and easily takes to the skies.
Nice work!
Once we started to roll, I gunned it. I got up at a fairly good clip.
As soon as I told you to go, I was totally expecting to watch the cloth just rip.
And safely back on the ground, Mark is one hell of a stunned pilot.
That was beautiful!
Oh, thank you.
That worked like a charm!
Thank you, thank you.
Good job. That's what we call busted on Mythbusters.
That is superior help. Thank you so much.
That's what I call amazing.
Were you surprised?
Yes, I was really surprised that it just took off normally. I thought that I would just sit here like a brick.
It was beautiful being over there. I'm watching the tarp moving like this, and you just took off like it wasn't even there. You had no relationship to it.
That's true, and I'm totally surprised.
Awesome. That was so good.
Safe flying.
Bye. Maybe we can supersize this with a jet next time.
This one is so controversial. I can't believe that the very pilot we hired to test it thought that his plane would remain stationary.
Yeah, for some reason people just can't wrap their brains around the fact that the plane's engine is not sending power to the wheels. It sends it to the propeller.
Yeah. Okay, let's get official about this. How do you want to call it?
Well, we put the plane on a conveyor belt, and the plane took off just fine, so...
I'd say that's busted.
Busted.
That shaving foam experiment was really fun.
Yeah, and it came from a viewer.
Just shows that even frat boy pranks can be tested as viable myths.
Yeah, and if you have any ideas for myths, log on to discovery.com/mythbusters and let us know what you got.